Fast pause of local things with our good buddy Tyson Alger of the I-5 corridor. Give him a follow on Twitter at Tyson Alger. He's doing great local coverage for a lot of the sports teams and things that are happening in the beautiful area of ours. Tyson joins us now for the Daily Ticker. Tyson, good morning. Thanks for hopping on with us. Where are you at on the Pac-12 tournament? Are you excited for this? Does it feel like a foregone conclusion that Arizona's going to win it? Oregon got the 4 seed. Where's Tyson Alger at right now on the Pac-12 tournament?
I'm feeling a little nostalgic about it because I think it's the one. I think it's the one thing that the Pac-12 has done consistently right throughout. You know, this phase of stepping on rakes and hitting itself in the face. Like I feel like the Pac-12 tournament is like the one thing that, like, if anybody's ever gone to it and gone to Vegas and spent 3 or 4 days there and just participated in that, like it's always a good time. So I'm a little bummed that it's ending, but I also don't really expect a ton of fireworks this week because I think Arizona is going to win the thing. Not to be depressing here to start out the bit this morning, but I don't think that this is one of those years where the Ducks and Beavers are going to be putting together a magical run.
Well, it might not be a magical run, but how are we feeling about a Civil War matchup potentially? Do you think Oregon State's going to be able to get the best of UCLA and we get one more Oregon State matchup? I think that's how the bracket works out this time.
Yeah. I mean, like there's some potential for it. I mean,
well, I know there's potential, but I mean, how are you feeling? Do you think the chances are good?
I mean, I want to come back on the show again.
No, let's be honest about it. I think it's interesting, Tyson, because Schultze's producing today. Yesterday, he's basically out on Altman. It's 3 years now with no NCAA tournament unless they win this, and I don't think anybody thinks that they will. And Oregon State, I mean, they brought back their Elite 8 team for the most part, and then that team crumbled. They won like 5 games. Somehow that's not a big deal. And then, this year I know they had another season, and then this year they're awful again. It's interesting times right now for the 2 in-state coaches.
Yeah, no, it's been a sad basketball season, to be honest. And I mean, like if it wasn't for the Oregon State women, I mean, this entire state has been down, and it's pretty crazy to look maybe a year or 2 pre-pandemic and think about like how solid everyone thought all those positions were. I know Oregon State has kind of maybe bounced back from like that 3-win season they had after the Elite 8, but if that's like the standard that you're looking at, like that's kind of a tough standard to present to your fan base. And then the Oregon thing, like, the discussion for the last couple of weeks is rightfully so, is like this team is so injured, but it's like this feels like Groundhog Day. This has been 3-4 years in a row where it's a team that had high expectations in the fall and then another good recruiting class and, all these sorts of things. And it just, by the time you get to March and by the time you get to Vegas, it kind of feels like the end of the hangover where you're just trying to get like the car into Vegas in one piece. And, it's just unfortunate because like that's the one thing is if you look at Oregon's roster, you still think that it's a pretty talented team and you can see some of the stuff they do and you see, oh my gosh, and Folly Dante really fills up the stat sheet, but then they lose by 4, 5, 10 points every game. It's really frustrating.
So looking at this team, because I think that the injuries are the unfortunate story of the Ducks this year. I mean, there was a graph I was seeing going around like comparing injuries to the rest of the Division I or the Power 5 schools, and Oregon, like by far and away, has had the most minutes lost from players in the starting 5 or on the rotation. Is next year the year then to grade as long as things go well on the injury front? Is that kind of the one that we have to be looking out for as far as Dana Altman and the future of this Ducks program with him?
I think 100%. I think he's a coach that has earned himself a little bit of a wide berth when it comes to like getting things back on track. He's he's the best coach in Oregon history. He brought them to a Final Four. I don't think he forgot how to coach all of a sudden. But when you consider his age, when you consider like the movement with the program to the Big Ten, with everything that's happening, the change of the NIL era, like you need to see that work here in this new era of college athletics. And this ends up being 4 years in a row without the NCAA tournament, with the luxuries that they have at Oregon. It's crazy how cool the football program is, and like how everyone talks about Nike and the uniforms, and just like how Oregon football's been at the forefront of everything. Like, you would think they'd be able to do that with basketball too. Like Nike and basketball, that goes pretty hand in hand. But this has been a relatively unmarketable team in the Altman era, just because that's not the type of coach he is. And, the trade-off to that has been a lot of winning. And, if you're not doing a whole lot of winning, you're not able to do any of that stuff. And so I think that this is a really kind of gut check time for Altman and his staff. And, I think, if they don't make it this year, I think that's still okay. But I think next year becomes the ultimate year where, like, you can't blame injuries 4 years in a row. And that's kind of what it feels like it's coming down to.
Tyson Alger, our guest here, i5corridor.com. Give him a follow. He covers a lot of the local teams and events that are going on. And one of them that we've picked up, some of our listeners, your Timbers coverage. You've expanded into Timbers coverage on a more regular basis.
What a win for the lads on Saturday.
I mean, the last second goal to give them a win at New York. We got a diehard listener that gives us all these gambling tips, and he's 2 for 2 now in the last couple of weeks. What's your read on the Timbers? What kind of brought it on? Was it the disappointing basketball seasons locally that kind of drove you to want to dive a little bit more into Timbers, or just something you're generally interested in?
Yeah, it was kind of a little bit of both of that. Like, I've done a few timber stories over the year, but it's never something that, like, I felt that the corridor was big enough to really have the audience for yet. And so, this year it was a combination of basketball being a little bit down, me being in my third year now running this, and kind of being a little bit more confident into dipping my toes into some other waters. And then also just, locally it's a professional team that sits 30,000 people in a stadium, and it's not covered all that consistently by some local news outlets. So I thought it was an opportunity for the corridor to kind of get our feet wet a bit, and it's been a heck of a start for them so far. I mean, to have Evander score that goal in the 96th minute in his first game after they've been complaining about not being able to sign a DP, and these are all phrases that I was completely foreign to about 3 weeks ago, but I'm sounding pretty professional, aren't I, guys? Like, I know my soccer here.
Football, football with Tyson.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a lot of fun to cover. It's just different. I've done so much Ducks for the last 10 years that it's just kind of fun to not know everything about a team or program or sport that you're covering. And so I think it's kind of led to some kind of wide-eyed coverage. I'm coming in and not necessarily trying to pretend like I'm the expert. I want to come in and write about the things that I think are cool and new, and that sort of stuff to me. And this Timbers, between their new coach with Phil Neville, who, if you YouTube that guy, he's been doing interviews on BBC for like 30 years at this point. There's a lot of history there. There's a lot to work with as a writer, and I've been enjoying it.
Well, you should listen to Phil Neville interviews because he has a British accent, and who doesn't love listening to a British guy talk? I mean, the accent is just wonderful.
It gets really hard for me because, like, when I'm around the hockey guys, like Wednesday nights, like, I always slip into my little Midwestern Canadian accent. I'm from Alaska. You kind of morph into it really quickly, and if you're around a British accent too long, like, I just hope that I don't start doing that because it's going to sound terrible.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. The cutie. Are the cuties still playing okay? Are you guys still killing it over there?
We're getting a little old, man.
Yeah,
like,
I was worried about that.
There's like last week we were playing this group of guys who they were all like 23 years old, and it was a night game, and they put us down like 4-1, and like we're giving us juice boxes after. We might have to start entering the age brackets, man. It's getting sad.
Well, you guys gave me and Dirt little cuties T-shirts about 4 or 5 years ago. I still wear it, and I still get people like, "Hey, is this a sports team?" And I go, "Yeah, it's one of the best hockey teams out there." And then, like, I don't know if they go look it up, but I always just tell people it's one of the best hockey teams out there because they love the little cuties on the back of the T-shirt. So I still rock the little cuties merch, no matter how old you guys are getting. I'll go down with the ship. You guys are the new age warriors. Just let you age gracefully, and even if you don't win a championship in last year, I'll stick with you forever. I'm loyal that way. I want to get you out of here, though, you mentioned the Ducks. Spring football is going to start soon. This is it, right? Like, you mentioned the difference of excitement between football, basketball, and rightfully so. I also think, one coach is in his 30s, the other coach is not in his 30s. It's a new world here. This is the expectations. He has got a loaded roster. He might have the best team just on paper in the conference. Maybe that's Ohio State to some. He's got an experienced quarterback. This is, I know it's year 3, but like it's kind of it, right? This is where we start to say, Dan Lanning, you got to win all these games. You got to take that step. Oregon's been good, but this is kind of the real year of expectations for the first time in his career.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, and it's funny because they were a team that flirted with the playoff last year. They beat Washington one of those 2 games. They're maybe playing in those final 4, but looking at this, I kind of feel like the Bo Nix era for the Ducks might have kind of been the prologue to like what the real Dan Lanning era is, because as you've watched that team kind of assemble talent the last couple of years and put things together and put that coaching staff together, if Dylan Gabriel can come in and maybe come close to matching that production, which I think is a lot of an ask, because Bo Nix put together one of the better seasons in Oregon football history, but Gabriel is very experienced. He has similar stats. If he can come in there and handle that, like I think this team, I think this team, the expectations that people are throwing around are valid. They're as talented as they've ever been at the skill positions. The offensive line is, you're losing Jackson Powers Johnson, but you're returning both of your tackles. You're returning your guards. The defense imported pieces. I just really like what they're doing, and it's going to be an interesting era kind of moving forward, where you have so much depth in these kind of Power 2 team, or these Power 2 conferences, so much depth because of recruiting. Like I'm just curious as to like how extended these windows are, because it used to kind of feel like a team or a roster would peak for 2 or 3 years, and then you'd kind of have to rebuild a little bit. But at this point, like if you can go in and plug and play a quarterback every single time you graduate one out, this could be the start of a really large window here for the Ducks. And it's all interesting that we're talking about that, as I'm just about to head down to Eugene for pro day and watch Bo Nix throw for the last time. So it's kind of a end of an era there as the Ducks get the new one going with Gabriel and Dante Moore and everyone later this week.
As quickly as you can, I'm a subscriber to the I-5 Corridor. I have been since you created the website. I enjoy the coverage. As quickly as you can, just plug maybe what's coming. Sounds like we got some pro day stuff to look for on the I-5 Corridor website. Anything else? Yeah,
we're saying goodbye to Bo Nix today on the I-5 Corridor. We have a profile on the Portland Timbers Anthony coming up, and then also we are going to be continuing our Introducing the Big Ten series. We're going to be doing that next week with Penn State, I believe. So, I've got some good stuff coming up the next couple weeks. And then obviously basketball coverage as well.
Absolutely. Tyson Alger, I-5 Corridor, busting his butt locally, doing a great job. Thanks for hopping on with us, Tyson. It's always great to catch up with you.
Hey, thank you so much.
Yep, there we go. Tyson Alger, I-5 Corridor. Went along there on the ticker, but had dove into a lot of local things there.